the man at the gate. "My name is Alex. I never had much, but I always worked hard and I never gave up. I grew up in a small house with my mother and sister, and we had just enough to live. School was hard, money was tight, and I left early to find a job. Any job I could do. At 19, I became a driver. Nothing fancy, just driving cars and keeping them clean. One day I got lucky. Someone called me and said a rich man needed a quiet driver. I wore my best shirt, fixed my hair, and stood at his gate, nervous but full of hope. He walked out slowly, old and quiet, with a white beard and a calm, deep voice. He said, "You're young but polite. I'll give you a try. Just don't speak too much." His name was Mr. Mark. He was known in the city, rich and private and very old. He had no wife, no kids, no friends around, just staff and silence and tall gates. He didn't talk much at first, just told me where to go and watched the roads in silence. But I stayed patient, drove safely, arrived on time, and never touched his things. Weeks passed like that, calm and quiet, just driving from place to place, day by day. Sometimes he read books in the back seat. Sometimes he just stared out the window. I never asked questions, never tried to talk, just did my job and stayed in my lane. But one day he asked, "Do you like driving?" And I smiled and said, "Yes, sir, I do." He nodded slowly, said nothing more. But after that day, he talked a little more. He told me stories about his younger days, about the city, the wars, the hard times. I listened with care, never interrupted, just drove while he remembered his life. He said I reminded him of someone, a boy he once helped, but lost over time. He grew softer with time, let me help with things, even joined him for tea some days. I still lived small in a quiet room near his garage, but I felt peace and something more. I had no father, no older brother, but somehow he filled both roles with his silence. He never said much, but in his own way, I think he liked having me around. One evening he said, "You're honest, Alex, and that's rare." "Don't ever lose it," I said. "Thank you, sir," and meant every word because his words meant a lot to me. I never thought of money, never thought of reward. I was just glad to be trusted, but I didn't know that trust would one day change everything I knew about life. The days went quietly. The sun rose early and I waited by the car, ready to drive. Mr. Mark came out slow with careful steps, holding his cane, always dressed well. He nodded to me each morning, his eyes tired, his voice low, but still strong inside. We didn't talk much at first, but I could feel respect, quiet and steady like the wind. He started asking small things like music in the car or a quick stop for coffee. He told me how he liked things, soft music, clean streets, and no noise from crowds. He was old but sharp and noticed everything from traffic lights to my polished shoes. He never smiled big, but I saw it in his eyes when I opened doors or gave him tea. One day he looked tired, leaned back in the seat and said, "Alex, stay close today." I stayed near the car, watched his steps, helped him carry his bags, walked beside him. He sat on a bench under a tree and told me this place was where his wife once sat. His voice broke a little, his hands shook. but he smiled gently, lost in memory and sun. After that day, he trusted me more, gave me more tasks, asked me for opinions. He wanted advice on roads, food, even colors, and sometimes even asked about music. He let me inside the house to help with small things like mail and simple repairs. I felt proud but quiet, like a student learning life from a master who said little. The staff watched me closely. Some smiled, some didn't. But I stayed polite to all. One cook said, "He talks to you with surprise. He never talks to anyone else." I didn't know why. Maybe he saw something. Maybe just liked the silence we shared. But slowly I felt I belonged. Not as a worker only, but as a quiet friend in his world. He showed me books with notes inside, old letters and photos from long ago. He told me about his youth, his first job, his mistakes, and the people he lost. He didn't cry, but I felt the pain hidden in his soft voice and long, deep pauses. I listened closely, always with care, knowing every word came from far in his soul. He once said, "People chase noise, but peace is where the truth lives." That stayed with me like a lesson from a father, strong and soft at the same time. I kept a notebook, wrote down his words, and read them again on quiet nights. His stories were like maps, full of lessons, showing me how to walk in life with care. One cold evening, he fell near the steps, and I ran fast to lift him up with care. He smiled, said, "Thank you," equals. But I saw the fear hidden behind his tired eyes. He said, "I'm getting old, Alex." And I said, "I'm here. Don't worry. I won't leave." We sat together in silence, two people from different worlds, but close in heart. Weeks passed with new routines, doctor visits, medicine boxes, and short, slow walks. I held his arm, helped him sit, brought his favorite tea, and kept the car warm. He talked more during drives about life and regrets, about how fast time could fly. I said little, but I listened well, and I knew my quiet presence gave him peace. He asked me once, "Do you have dreams?" And I paused, not sure what to say. I said, "A simple life with respect, with peace, and a family one day." He nodded, smiled slightly, and said, "Good dreams, strong dreams, worth chasing." He looked out the window as if seeing something far, something time could not erase. I cleaned the car each day, polished it twice, even if we didn't go anywhere. He noticed every detail, every corner, and said, "You treat this car like gold." I said, "It's yours, sir." And he said, "But you treat it like it's yours, too." That sentence stayed with me, deeper than gold, stronger than any other gift. I didn't know what he was planning. I just kept doing my best every single day. The days grew slower. He walked less, but we still sat outside when sun was soft. I brought him books, old music, warm soup, and stories I thought he might enjoy. He smiled more now, even laughed a little, and I felt lucky just to see that light. One night he called me late, asked me to sit, and handed me a small blue box. Inside was a watch, old and silver, with letters carved inside and a quiet weight. He said, "This was my father's. Now it's yours because time belongs to those who care." I didn't know what to say. My hands shook, and all I could whisper was, "Thank you." He said, "You are like the son I never had." And that broke something in my heart. I never thought he felt that. I was just a driver, but somehow more now in his eyes. I said, "You've been like a father, too." And he nodded, silent and full of meaning. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the stars and thought of how life quietly changes. Mr. Mark began to walk slower each morning, and his voice turned soft and tired. I helped him sit in the sun, brought his tea with honey, and stayed near in silence. He often looked at the sky, like searching for someone or waiting for a message. I didn't ask questions. I just stayed close and gave him quiet support every day. The garden became our peaceful place where flowers bloomed and birds came often. We sat under the tree, watched the colors change, and shared stories without rush. He told me about his wife again, how she laughed, how she loved rainy mornings. I could see how much he missed her. Even after years, the pain still lived inside. One afternoon, he handed me a leather book, old and filled with his life notes. He said, "This is my heart on paper," and asked me to keep it safe with care. Inside were pages of lessons, thoughts on work, love, family, and forgiveness. I read some slowly each night and learned things he never said out loud before. The house grew quieter, fewer guests came, and his world became smaller each day. He trusted only a few people, and I was always at the top of that short list. Sometimes he would fall asleep while talking, still holding my hand like a friend. In those quiet hours, I realized he had become more than a job to me. One day, a lawyer visited again, bringing papers with serious words and names. Mr. Mark told me to sit and listen because it concerned me more than I knew. He looked me in the eyes and said, "You've been my family even when I had none." I felt my chest tighten, unsure what he meant, but I stayed calm and silent. He explained that he had changed his will and left everything in my name: the house, the car, the garden, and his savings. All passed to me now. I tried to speak, but my voice broke and he simply placed his hand on mine. "No one ever gave you much," he said, "but you gave me peace when I needed it." He made me promise to care for the garden, to let children play on the lawn. He said, "Build something honest with what I leave and make it grow slowly." I told him I would try my best, and he nodded like that was all he needed. There was no big goodbye, just gentle smiles, quiet tears, and soft words. That winter morning, he didn't wake up, and I found him still in his chair. The heater was on, the book on his lap, and his glasses hanging from his shirt. I sat beside him for an hour, not crying, just holding his warm old hand. He had passed in peace in his home with love near and the world quiet. The funeral was small and simple with a few people and soft classical music. I gave a short speech, talked about his kindness and how he gave me purpose. After they left, I stayed behind, standing near the fresh flowers on his grave. I thanked him again for trusting me, for changing my life, for making me better. The house was now mine, but it still felt like his. His voice lived in the walls. I didn't change anything for weeks. I just cleaned, watered plants, and remembered. His room stayed untouched, as if he'd returned soon to ask for his usual tea. But I knew he was gone, and I had to carry what he left inside me forward. I opened the notebook again, and this time I read every word he wrote. He had dreams he never chased, regrets he never fixed, and lessons to pass on. He talked about how money fades, how health matters, and how love is everything. Reading those pages felt like hearing his voice again, guiding me with each word. Neighbors came with food and kind words, many saying, "He trusted you the most." Some asked how I'd spend the money, if I'd leave or stay or start something new. But I wasn't sure yet because it wasn't about the money. It never really was. It was about doing something honest, something kind, just like he taught me. So I started planning a center, a place where lonely people could feel heard. A home with books, music, and gardens for the old, the tired, the forgotten. I used the same room he loved, turned it into a quiet space with soft chairs, and I opened the garden gate to children, laughter, and simple joy. Some days I still feel like the driver, waking early, checking the weather. But now I drive dreams, I carry hopes, I deliver care to those who need it. And every flower that blooms outside reminds me of a man who changed everything, not with noise or fame, but with trust, peace, and a heart full of second chances. The center opened slowly with small chairs, soft music, and warm cups of tea. People came with quiet hearts, carrying years of silence, pain, and tired memories. Some sat alone for hours, looking out the window, watching trees move in wind. Others told stories from youth, laughed gently, or cried while holding warm hands. Every corner had books to read, plants to water, and blankets for cold days. There were paintings on walls, soft lights at night, and cookies for the guests. Children ran in the garden, chasing butterflies, jumping over stones, laughing loud. Old people smiled as they watched, some joining games, some clapping their hands. I became more than a helper, more than a driver, more than a man with a story. I was now someone who listened, who cared, who remembered to say good morning. The notebook from Mr. Adam stayed on my desk, open to a new page each week. I used it to guide the center, to remind myself of why I started this journey. One old man arrived with no shoes, carrying only a small bag and sad eyes. He said nothing for days, just sat near the tree watching birds come and go. I brought him soup and tea, gave him clean socks, and let him stay in silence. One morning he smiled at me and said, "I feel warm for the first time." A woman came with her daughter, tired from long nights in the hospital nearby. She had nowhere else to go, and the child had no school or friends or books. We gave her a room to rest, toys to play with, and a bed that smelled like flowers. The girl laughed on the swing while her mother finally slept a full night. People began to donate food, clothes, chairs, books, and small pieces of art. They brought what they had, not because I asked, but because they felt the love. The center became more than a place. It became a home, a heart, a quiet song. No one felt like a stranger, and every guest became part of our small family. One afternoon, a reporter came curious about this house filled with laughter. He asked me about the money, the idea, and the man who gave me everything. I told him it started with a car ride, a job, and a kind old man with tired eyes. He wrote a story about second chances, about trust, and about quiet kindness. The story spread online, and people from other cities came to see the center. Some asked to build something similar to start their own version with love. I shared the notebook with them, the parts that guided me every step of the way. They copied ideas, added new touches, and promised to stay true to the heart. Soon we had visitors from everywhere, teachers, artists, nurses, and old cooks. They all gave time, care, and skill, and helped build new rooms and bigger gardens. One man painted a wall with bright colors, writing words like hope and peace. Another woman made quilts for every chair, each stitched with someone's name. I still woke up early each day, made tea, checked lights, and watered the flowers. But now I did it with purpose, with pride, and with a deep, steady joy inside. Mr. Mark would be proud, I think, to see how much good came from his gift, not just in money or land, but in the way people found each other again. One boy said, "This is the first place where no one laughed at my stutter." A woman said, "Here, I feel seen, I feel safe, I feel like I matter again." Another old man cried and said, "I thought I would die alone, but not anymore." Their words became part of the walls, soft echoes of the life we built together. We started new things, music nights, reading groups, and warm meal Sundays. Children drew pictures for guests, taped them on windows, filled halls with color. Volunteers gave haircuts, foot rubs, warm baths, and soft hugs to those who needed. No one asked where you came from, only how you felt and if you wanted tea. Every day felt full of meaning, not because it was big, but because it was real. A man with no legs taught painting. A blind woman taught songs from memory. People didn't come to forget their pain, but to share it and carry it together. We held space for joy, for grief, for healing, and for growing without shame. I sometimes walked into the garden at sunset alone with the breeze and birds. I'd think of the past, of long drives, of silent mornings, and of my quiet friend. He never asked for thanks, never expected fame, never needed loud applause. But he gave me everything, and through me gave it to so many more hearts. I named the garden after him, a small stone with Adam's Peace Garden written. People sat near it to think, to rest, to remember someone they lost or miss. It became a sacred spot, a place where tears were welcome and nothing felt wrong. Sometimes I sat there too, feeling the sun, the soil, and the gentle breeze. Years passed, but the love only grew. The roots went deeper, and the laughter stayed. I never forgot who I was, a driver, a friend, a man given a second life. People still came with broken shoes, broken hearts, and old wounds needing light. We welcomed them all with tea, warmth, and the promise of quiet belonging. I wasn't rich in gold, but I was full of purpose, full of memories, full of love. The center didn't make news every day, but it made people feel human again. And that to me was more valuable than anything in this fast and loud world. I was just a driver once, but now I was a builder of peace, of home, of hope. The years moved gently, one by one, with peace, warmth, and calm mornings. Every day I walked through the house, smiling at faces, holding soft memories. The center stayed busy with love, laughter, and quiet talks under tall trees. I watched children grow taller, older guests pass on, and new ones arrived daily. We added more rooms and spaces, places to read, paint, sleep, and talk together. We built a music corner, a garden kitchen, and a small library full of soft chairs. People shared stories after dinner. Some laughed, some cried, some just listened. I sat with them often, drinking tea and feeling the gift of quiet presence grow. One day, a young man came lost and scared, holding nothing but a coat and photo. He looked like me long ago, full of fear, pain, and heavy silence deep inside. He asked for a place to sit, then for tea, then for someone to listen for a while. I gave him a blanket, warm soup, and all the time he needed to feel safe. Days later, he said, "I thought I had no worth, but you made me feel human again." His words reminded me of Mark, the car rides, the silence, the gift I once got. Now I was giving it back, not through money, but through time and soft kindness. It felt full, like a circle complete, like light returned to where it once began. Every photo on the wall had a face, a name, a small story of quiet change. We never erased pain, but we held it gently, like a cup too full to carry alone. The center became known not for size, but for how it made people feel inside. It was simple, small, steady, like a fire that never stopped warming hearts. I still remembered my first drive, my first talk with the old man in the back. He never asked for much, just peace, respect, and someone to care a little more. Now I was that person for others because he showed me how to be gentle first. His life gave me mine, and through mine, many others found theirs again too. I didn't need awards or praise, just the sound of laughter after a shared meal. I didn't count money or fame, only the number of chairs filled with love each night. And when people asked who built all this, I always said it started with a ride because that simple day in a car changed everything I ever thought I was. So I kept driving, not cars, but people from sadness to hope, from fear to light. And every time someone said thank you, I whispered inside, thank you too. Not to them, but to Mark, to the past, to the journey that brought me this far. And in that soft whisper, I felt full, complete, and quietly, deeply home. Sometimes the people we serve become the people we love, not through words, but through years of quiet loyalty.